going on, everybody? This is Screenwriter Randall Rydell bringing you another episode of The Process, where I break down tips, tools, inspirations, and just all around just things about filmmaking and screenwriting that you guys can all relate to, take notes, whatever it is. Now that we're entering the month of Halloween, we're going to be doing pretty much all this month, all horror movie related or horror TV related stuff in regards to films and screenwriting, so let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to start off with my top 10 favorite horror movies. A lot of you are going to be like, why don't you put that in? Why don't you put that in? We got a whole month. It's October 1st. So we're going to be going through a lot of stuff. So we're going to break down my top 10, the screenwriters that wrote them, and then we're going to go from there. All right. Number one, as always on my list, is The Exorcist. This movie's still scared out of me. It's one of those movies like I can put it on in the daytime and it still scares me. William Friedkin just captured this atmosphere and the subject matter and everything about it is just, it's terrifying. And William Peter Blatty, who he wrote the script and wrote the novel that's based on, wrote the screenplay, and it was just perfection. So it was really just still to this day one of the best. And he also wrote other screenplays besides novels. He wrote The Grand Train Robbery, which is in horror. Shot in the Dark, which is the second Pink Panther movie from the 60s, which I think is actually the best Pink Panther movie. And he wrote and directed the criminally underrated Exorcist 3, which I feel is terrifying and one of the best ever made. So, Exorcist. Number 2, favorite horror movies, Halloween. We all know this is a masterpiece in horror. One of John Carpenter's absolute best films ever made. He wrote this with Deborah Hill, but we're going to focus on John Carpenter for this one. He also is a screenwriter for The Fog, and then he went uncredited for Prince of Darkness and They Live, which is all three of those are just kind of like really good horror movies that he wrote and directed. He just directed massive amounts of great horror films as well, but he didn't write all of them. So those are the three that he wrote on. And then Halloween, if you haven't already seen it, come on, it's October 1st. Number 3, also directed by John Carpenter, The Thing. This movie's a masterpiece. The original is really good. I even like the prequel. A lot of people dislike the prequel, but I love the fact that it literally ends with the same shot from the beginning of this film. It is showing what happened at the Swedish camp when McCready and everybody goes and searches the Swedish camp, or the Norwegian camp, excuse me. And just, it worked. But this is easily Carpenter's best film. I know it bombed at the box office when it came out, but I don't think people knew what they were talking about or what was going into. This was written by Bill Lancaster. He doesn't have too many writing credits. He wrote the great and mighty The Bad News Bears, which is one of the best sports movies ever, kids movies, whatever. He sadly did write on Bad News Bears 3, The Bad News Bears Go to Japan, which is god awful, but you gotta eat, right? And then he wrote, when John Carpenter was originally going to direct Firestarter, he wrote the initial draft of that, but after this bombed, Universal didn't allow him to do Firestarter, so then Mark L. Lester did it. I'm still interested in seeing what would happen if John Carpenter had gotten it directed, so The Thing. Alrighty, as everybody knows, my favorite movie, but not my favorite horror movie, but my favorite movie of all time, Lost Boys. Joel Schumacher obviously directed this. It was written by Janice Fisher and James Jeremias, but it was rewritten, got to production status with Jeffrey Boehm, who we spoke about before in earlier episodes. Horror-wise, he wrote The Dead Zone. He wrote Inner Space, which is not really horror, but it's kind of in there. And then he wrote a really good episode of Tales from the Crypt. That episode was called Creep Course, with Anthony Michael Hall, obviously the nerd from Breakfast Club, and Nina Semesco, who was Corey Haim's twin sister in License to Drive. She's a beautiful woman too. He wrote that, and then sadly he did pass in the year 2000, but Lost Boys. All right, number 5 on my list, which should be on everybody's list, the original Night of the Living Dead. George A. Romero's classic. Everybody knows the story behind this and everything that went down to get this movie made. It's a trip. And you know, he didn't even mean for it to be like a racial film. It just ended up being taken like that, but that's okay. It was written by him and John A. Russo. John A. Russo, he ended up selling the rights, and I believe he did a novel to it, and then Russell Steiner, another guy that produced on it, they ended up breaking off and doing the like Return of the Living Dead, that whole series. But George A. Romero, for, you know, writing wise, I will give him obviously Dawn of the Dead. Believe it or not, I like the remake to Dawn of the Dead more than the original. Don't shoot me, that's just how I look at it. Day of the Dead, which I think is fantastic, and The Dark Half. The Dark Half is really good. If you haven't seen that, definitely watch that. But Night of the Living Dead, number 5. Number 6 is one of the ones I saw very early on in age that I latched to and I just absolutely loved as well. Tobe Hooper's Poltergeist. There's always those rumors that Spielberg actually directed a lot of this movie, but Spielberg did write the script. Spielberg doesn't write that much. Like early on in his career, he wrote the stories for a lot of stuff. Like he wrote the story for Goonies. He wrote the script for Close Encounters, and he wrote the script for AI. But the other writers, Michael Grace and Mark Victor, they actually wrote this, and then they wrote Poltergeist 2, which I love. They wrote Cool World, the Ralph Bakshi animated movie, live action animated movie. Originally conceived it as a horror movie about a toon that goes to the real world to kill her father for leaving her in the toon world, and she's a cartoon as well. I would be interested to see how that would have worked out. And then they also wrote on the Steven Seagal movie Marked for Death. So, Poltergeist, number 6. Number 7, another masterpiece of a film, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Everybody knows 3 is my favorite. Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is my absolute favorite in the series, but this one, honestly, up until the last like 5 minutes of the movie, it's pure horror. It's pure just filmmaking at its finest. It changed the trajectory of just, you know, a killer with a mask and a knife to this guy that can stalk you in your dreams. Instead of having one knife, he has a whole hand that's knives. And the burn face, the hat, his talking. If you fall asleep, you're screwed. Like, Nightmare on Elm Street, it's a must. So yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street, number 7. All right, number 8, another favorite of mine. It is my second favorite vampire movie of all time, Fright Night. Directed by Tom Holland. Tom Holland is another horror icon that I love as well. This movie I saw it with my buddy when we were like 10 or 11. His mom let us watch it, and it just stuck with me. I love Fright Night 2. I love the Fright Night remake. I think it was, if you're going to update it, that's how you update a movie without taken away from the original. The original still is the best, but Tom Holland, who directed, also wrote it. We all know he wrote Psycho 2. Psycho 2 is really good. It's a very, very good sequel. He wrote on Child's Play with Don Mancini, who is the creator and has written every movie in the Chucky series, and John LaFia, who ended up directing Child's Play 2, and then he wrote and directed Man's Best Friend. But yeah, Tom Holland went off to write obviously Psycho 2, Child's Play, and then the Stephen King movie Thinner. But yeah, Fright Night is a must. Number 9. People were like, that should be higher. It made the list, didn't it? Number 9, The Shining. I know how Stephen King feels about this adaptation, and I'm sorry you feel that way. I think this is literally an epic horror film. The performances, everything about it. Yes, it deviates from the novel, but that's what the novel's for. This and its sequel, Dr. Sleep, are just fantastic. Kubrick wrote pretty much all of his movies. Not always horror. The closest to horror I would give him is 2001. If you really think about that concept and how going crazy up in space, that's terrifying. A Clockwork Orange, that's a pretty messed up movie. That's pretty horrific as well. And as much as I don't like the film, Eyes Wide Shut, that's pretty, it's kind of in the horror realm or just weird movie realm. So, but The Shining, hands down. Number 10, final movie in my list. Everybody's gonna be like, really? And remember, we're gonna go all month, so there's gonna be other movies are gonna pop up. But number 10 on my favorite horror movie list, top 10, Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight. I've been watching this movie since I was 9 years old. It's so fun. It's action-packed. It actually influenced my screenwriting a lot when I was writing horror, because I love just the concept of that film. I love the whole blood in the doorways blocks the demons from coming in. I like the fact that Breaker is having to find somebody to replace him because he's almost close to being done. The whole good versus evil. I love that Christ's blood is what is stopping the demons, and that they're actually working, pretty much for Christ to, get the demons out. And I think that's a really good concept because of all just the darkness going on in the world right now. Seeing evil get conquered like that really was good. And Billy Zane gives one of the best performances ever. He's having so much fun with this. And Jada Pinkett is the first black final girl that kind of lived, besides Kelly Jo Minter, I believe, in Nightmare on Elm Street 5. I could be missing somebody, forgive me if I did, but Jada Pinkett killed it with this. So, I forgot to talk about who wrote it. Okay, so Ethan Reith and Cyrus Voris. They also wrote on Bulletproof Monk with Chow Yun-fat and Sean William Scott. They wrote the story for the Robin Hood with Russell Crowe, which is alright. But they wrote and created the TV show Brimstone, which was on Fox in the 90s, which was really good. So they got some clout to them. So Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight. And that concludes today. Like I said, we're going to keep going and create more things. I just wanted people to kind of just see where I'm coming out with everything. And this is going to be a fun month. We're going to do a lot of stuff. So, again, this is Randall Rydell Russell. Right. See you next time.